So welcome to the show, everyone. This is me, Ravi Mandal, the host of TechCraft Podcast, and today we have a very special guest with us, Jeff Handy. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Hey, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here in Nepal and with you in person.
Yeah, I know you have a very tight schedule and you are flying back again, and then but I really wanted to do this podcast, and thank you very much for accepting our invite and then coming to this podcast, and I'm very glad this is finally happening. I was very excited for past few days, and then I'm very happy we are doing this right now. So to the audience, could you please introduce yourself to the audience, your background and what you're doing in Seva Development and what's your role there?
Of course. So my name is Jeff Handy, and I graduated from college not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, except that I wanted to be around startup companies. I thought that was a really cool place to be. There was an energy around it, and I'd like to be around people that were creating things, and hoped that I could be one of those people. And so I started actually in venture capital, where we started investing in small companies at this firm, and then had kind of an opportunity to try it out a little bit myself. And it was kind of in that transition period when Peter called me. Mm-hmm. And this probably goes a little bit more into the founding of Seva Development. And since then, I've been working just with Seva. It's been coming up on 5 years now. And right now, I run all of the operations. I'm the COO and helped Peter found the company. Mm-hmm. So it has been quite the ride.
So Seva Development is a company that actually made a very huge brand in itself in Nepalese tech community, because the origin story of Seva is something very different than our usual companies in Nepal, because they started from Lamjung as far as I know, and you started from Lamjung, then you moved to Pokhara, then to Kathmandu, and just wanted to cover a little bit about the story behind what was the exact push to start a company in Lamjung, and why not in Kathmandu, where every companies are starting in Kathmandu, but you are starting in Lamjung, right? So what was the story behind that? I'm very curious about that.
Yeah. So Peter West, the CEO of the company, went out with his family right after the 2015 earthquake, mm-hmm. To just do a service project to help build the hospital that's out there. And when he went out, he realized that there's a lot of really smart, really amazing tech talent, but that they're not working in technology, especially out in these smaller communities. So the whole thought there was, let's go to these smaller communities, hire some people who know technology, which we did do, and then also grab people that are interested in technology and then start to train them. And we've partnered with a university to help them get their education more traditionally, but really the main training comes from putting them on client projects and helping them learn on the job and have a job and get paid the whole time. As we all know, the tech scene right now in Nepal is something really special, and I think that we're all just kind of at the front end, and I think that it's only going to get bigger. And when I look at Asia generally, there's definitely tech hubs.
Yep.
But I think, and we can get into it a little bit later, but I think that Nepal is unique in terms of what it can deliver for a lot of reasons that I can cover. But one of those being its fantastic English, its great education system, and the fact that it is a fantastic export, mm-hmm. Using the mind and the technology in order to get great people in Nepal working outside of Nepal without having to leave the country, mm-hmm. and to build it from the ground up. And so that's something that and then taking it even a step further, building out the communities that don't have access to technology. So to kind of follow up with your question, we went to Lamjung first, and it was going really, really well. And then we set up a branch in Pokhara. And then in Kathmandu, we always had kind of a management office there. And as we kept growing, we started to have a little bit of problems with scale. Mm-hmm. At the time especially, we weren't remote. We were having people come into the office. And there was definitely a training gap that we had, because we only had so many mids and seniors, and we had a lot of really great juniors that were eager to learn, but we didn't have the infrastructure to train them. So what we started to do is to start to consolidate. And we started to consolidate the talent so that we could really get our organization to kind of a point where it is now that we're over 100 people with a lot of really good skills. Now I think that what you're going to start seeing is that consolidation now going back out. to the communities again. I think that for a lot of really good reasons, we needed to kind of come to Kathmandu, but I think that what you're going to see from Seva Development is kind of going back out. And with remote work, we still have employees in Lamjung, we still have employees in Pokhara, but I think that one of my favorite things is that we still have people that work for us from that branch, and they love it. And we love them, and they've made such a big difference. When you have somebody who really didn't know anything about technology to then leading a 5 or 6 person team for one of our biggest clients, that's a big deal.
Yeah, true. So I was back in Lamjung with Pawan for a hackathon that was organized in Seva Development. So I was just there for a short training that I gave, and it was back in 2019, I believe. And I was already impressed by the fact that there were the people from the village area working in the company itself. But the biggest thing that struck to me was when we went for a lunch in the canteen of the office itself. So there were 2 ladies who were from the village itself, and they were serving us with so much happiness and everything, because this was something very new from them, because there were no biggest companies that were established in that area, and they were working there, and they got employment and everything. So that was something that struck to me to the heart itself. And thank you. I really appreciate for the work that you have done as a company in the rural area and also in the Kathmandu itself. And I hope you again go back to the same community and give them back. So I'm very much thankful for that. So going back to the challenges that you faced on the starting an IT company in Lamjung, you mentioned that even in earlier statement, what were the exact challenges that you started facing while scaling the company in Lamjung? You went to a point where there were 50 employees in Lamjung itself, and then you started getting some challenges, so had to shift the offices to different locations. So what were the exact reason behind that?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to the whole making sure that our juniors were learning and progressing, because everybody had their own goals. Some really wanted to learn automation, some wanted to learn PHP. And we had a lot of constraints as a company because our resources were scattered, all throughout the country. And at the time, I don't think that we were as good at remote work as we are now, and as good. And we would sometimes bring people in to do trainings like you, and I think that had a really big impact. But I think that at the end of the day, it was more that Lamjung started to become an office where most of our juniors were, but we knew that they had career goals and that they wanted to progress. And I thought that we thought collectively that the best way to do that would be to get our best minds all together. And I think that it's made a really big difference. Now that we're kind of back to remote work and learning some things, I think that we, like many organizations across the world, have realized that there's skills that we can leverage with doing paired programming sessions even online. So I think that that's kind of been a development for us. I think too, with us wanting to scale, because I think even though we're at 120 employees now, I think that we're going to want to double and triple and quadruple that number. And so I think that having a really solid base in Kathmandu where we can pull people quickly will be very important. But then making sure that when we kind of go back and have these other branches, just to make sure that we manage these people really well, that we have really good people, and our training program has now been a lot more established. Nitesh has done a really great job at helping people go from high school to testers, and then from testers to automation testers, kind of 2 separate programs. But what's been cool is that we've had people learn development skills, and I think for us, really what we want to do is make sure that the employees' goals are met, and that they can actually progress and save. And I think that we were hitting that ceiling a lot with how we were organized before.
So has moving to Kathmandu helped you a lot in terms of scaling your company?
I think it has. I think, like I say, now that we've scaled to a point, I think that now we wouldn't have those issues. But when you're a 40 or 50 or 60 person organization, it is amazing how different you are than when you're up over 100, just in terms of at least management.
So it seems like the company is not trying to stop that, and obviously they won't even want to, because from 50 to 100 now, I think you grow more and more, and wish you all the best for that. But I just wanted to cover a little bit about the other statement that you mentioned, that there are other tech hubs in Asia itself, like India, Singapore, Philippines, Indonesia, right? So they're growing in terms of IT itself, and probably they have bigger IT market than Nepal. And you mentioned there is a quality in the Nepalese community or the Nepalese tech industry that attracts the outsourcing market from the US or maybe other countries. So what do you feel as a US based company that you saw in Nepal that this is something that we want as a company to scale our outsourcing business, so but compared to the other countries in the region?
Yeah, so I have one kind of more like ethereal, like kind of more conceptual answer to that, and then I have a more realistic, answer. I think that one thing that you'll find in Nepal, people are hungry to grow. One thing that's geographically interesting about Nepal, that obviously is that it's landlocked, so you can't export things. It makes it really difficult to have a mercantile industry. Terraced farming, you can only go so far. There's not a lot of great infrastructure as far as shipping, about moving things via truck. So one of the best exports, though, is the internet and being able to use that intellectual capital. So I think that the reason why Nepal is so uniquely placed in this is that, one, the English here is fantastic. I think that tourism has a part to play. But then the second part of it is the remnants of the British education system, I think is fantastic. The other thing, too, is that I think because it is such a small community, everybody's helping each other. I mean, we have literally worked with every single IT company here. And in fact, we just took on a client that has employees here, but they want to work with us on a separate project. And they're one of the larger Nepalese-based companies here. And I think that because it is so small, competition doesn't feel like competition. It feels like everybody's on the same team. Everybody's trying to do the same thing, which is to help Nepal and to help provide great technology services to companies in the US. So I think for a combination of all of those reasons, I think that puts Nepal on the map, and I think it's only going to continue to grow. So now I think at this point it's only going to be, can the demand meet the supply in terms of engineers?
Yeah. So for that, like companies like Seva and other companies that are trying to do do trainings and everything, that will be straightforward to
exactly
meet the demand of the outsourcing business. But it's a perspective from your side, being a company that actually outsources projects to Nepal, right? But in terms of client that you talk with or work with, how do they feel when you are say that, hey, we have a company but we outsource engineers to the other countries? How do they react? Are they open to that, or are they skeptical to that? What's their thoughts on that?
I think at this point, most companies that are larger, small companies or mid-sized companies have had some sort of element of outsourcing, whether it has been actual tech outsourcing, or they've outsourced a call center or something. Somebody somewhere has had an experience with it in an organization. Or if they don't have that experience at that company, they had it working somewhere else. I think that it's pretty common for all companies generally that we talk to be familiar with outsourcing. Now, when we bring up Nepal, nobody bats an eye. I think it's because people hear India, and I think that they think, oh yeah, well, okay, Nepal's right next door. But I think that it does give us an advantage because of all those other things that we were saying. I think I'm sure that it's really great to work with India, and I have no complaints there. But when I look at Nepal and I look at some of the advantages that it has, outside of the fact that people are familiar with Nepal, people have heard of Nepal, people know where it is generally, people have heard of Mount Everest, and honestly, those things do make a difference, and it's sometimes silly to think that they do. But if you say something like Budapest, a lot of people in the US don't necessarily have a framework an idea of what that is. They don't have a connection to it. But when you say Nepal, there's some sort of connection, and mostly all positive, that people have to it, especially in Utah, where we sell to. We live in the mountains just like you guys do. Sure. It's big mountaineering, outdoors. I think it's a real big advantage for us.
Yeah. So thanks for your kind words for the Nepalese community, and obviously I have felt that as well, because we at our company as well. It's easier to convince the clients to say that, hey, we're in Nepal and we work in this, and then it's more easier. I don't know. It's it's a lucky thing that we got from like working being in Nepal. But yeah, so we have faced that as well, and I think obviously you have been in this business for a very long time, and then like you have seen that happening with your own eyes. But I also wanted to cover a little bit about the niche that the Seva Development has, like which is quality assurance testing, right? I believe this is the only company that I know that actually has a very good skill set in terms of automation testing and like quality assurance, which is something very unique to me, being in this community itself. Like, how did you actually start with the like with this niche, and how were you like planning to grow it from this point to the next level?
Yeah, I think it was really practical in that it was a lot easier to get people trained up to do quality assurance than it was to train them to be a developer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our lead time to teach somebody how to become a manual tester and to write test cases and things like that is so, you know, the barrier to entry is so much lower. So I think on one hand, we saw scale being able to happen in a big way a lot quicker with quality assurance. The other thing too is that nobody sells it, you know, in the US. It's just not like a thing that people specialize in. But as a lot of products are becoming more mature, they're realizing that they don't have processes for it. Every single day in the US, you're going to read of some sort of breach or some sort of thing that went down or some sort of information being lost. And it's hurting a lot of companies. People aren't thinking about quality. And now people are starting to get there. Mm-hmm. And luckily we're right there. So I think on one end it was strategic in that not a lot of people sell it, but also it was something where we felt like we could make a bigger impact in Nepal a lot quicker than trying to teach people how to become developers. Because once we bring them on to being a manual tester, then teaching them automation, now they have some tech skills, and then it's kind of finding what's right for them. And you know, we have people that have made that leap over the course of a couple of years now, and I think that's really rewarding to see.
Yeah. So, but in a different sense, like if you try to start with the QA automation, like for example, you start with manual testing first, then go to automation. Like they already gain some scripting skills.
Exactly.
And, the exact tech skills that is required to understand how applications works and like how it's supposed to work. Now, since you have that, you can start with you can even shift to a software engineering career.
Right.
And like that's a very clever move that you guys did.
Yeah, and part of it I think was it just kind of happened. You know, we'd be doing work for these clients doing quality assurance, and they're like, you know, it'd be really great if we had a bug tester. And it's like, oh, you know, we know somebody that could be a really good bug tester, so we'd hire them, and then they'd come in and do development work, and so it just kind of all snowballed from there. Mm-hmm. And now development's actually become quite a large part of our business, but not because we tried to make it that way. But I think that leading with quality is really great. In fact, I think that this upcoming week we're going to have like 3 new clients start just with quality assurance. Okay. And I think what's going to probably happen is eventually we're also going to take on their development, because it's just kind of like this natural progression that just seems to work well.
Yeah, sure. That's exciting to hear. So all the best for the new clients that you're onboarding. And it might sound a little bit of a silly question, but I just wanted to cover a little bit about the graduates that we get in terms of in the country, because obviously you have worked with fresh graduates in Seva Development that started from Nepal and like started working in Seva Development, and as maybe they upgraded to like promoted to software engineer or senior software engineer, and you were working with them. But you have also worked with graduates from the US, and like I see many people working in Seva Development LLC as well in the US. So like what was the difference that you found in terms of like the graduates that you see here? Because I just wanted to highlight this topic because usually the Nepalese tech community, or maybe let's say the student community, thinks that learning in the US is the best, and then like so if you go there, then we'll be the best. But generally, it's about how you gain the knowledge and practice yourself. But what's your thought on that, and like how it has been?
I think that one of the things that this whole experience has taught me so much is the will of the Nepali people to succeed despite all odds. I mean, there are humongous challenges that a lot of graduates here face, but I would say that Nepali graduates, maybe it's just, you know, because of who you guys are or because of your upbringing, you guys have to do a lot more you guys can be right where people are in terms of education. I think one thing that you're not hampered by is in the US, if you study computer science, you're going to be studying things that were relevant 3 years ago. I think that they're trying to get better. But the nice thing about here in Nepal, when you're learning the new stuff. And so I would say that, like, in terms of cutting edge in US, I think that Nepal doesn't always do things that are super cutting edge. But as far as what you're learning in university, you guys are already ahead. So bottom line is, I don't see a lot of differences in terms of, I think that that there is this perception of the education may be the best, but I really don't think it matters because people work harder and then they overcome it anyways. I mean, I think one of my favorite things is when our people are leading trainings for people that are from the US that graduated in computer science, but yet our people who, graduated from still a really good university, but there's this perception there, and they're the ones doing the training, for 6 or 7 people. And so again, I think it's really just down to the individual and how you're going to be able to perform. Outside of that, I do think though that people from Nepal, you guys have to overcome a whole lot more. But so far, I haven't seen any evidence that it is, that there's any sort of advantage that permanently keeps Nepal people behind.
Yeah. Sure. So on the same note, let's talk about the drawbacks, or maybe let's say a common place where Nepalese software developers fall behind in terms of outsourcing. Like there might be some, maybe you have faced, right? For example, if the community had this particular skill sets, or maybe this particular way of doing things, then it would be much better to convince our clients for taking more projects. Is there something like that you feel like that's lacking behind in the community itself?
That's a good question. I think that if I was to just say that maybe one aspect of things that we don't do a whole lot in is we don't do a lot of really, really technical data manipulations. I think you guys being an exception, I think that it is really difficult to find that experience, and I think that generally you have to be really self-motivated to learn that. I think that there's going to be more and more opportunities. Right now at Seva Development, we would hire as many as we could right now of people that have that skill set. But we just can't find it. And there's a lot of other companies that really, really want it. Data manipulation, machine learning, all of those different types of skill sets is huge. And I guess that's kind of what I meant when I said that maybe in terms of adopting technology a year or so behind the US just in that way. But I think that if that became something more, I think that it'll just have more higher paying opportunities, right? So now that's kind of where you're really pushing out the boundaries of what people can get paid, which is really exciting.
Yeah, so I have also quite faced that, even working in Nepalese projects or maybe in the project in the abroad countries, because data manipulation skill is something that most of lack, and we try to train our engineers in terms of that. But yeah, I think that needs to be worked out, I believe. But yeah, but talking about what I've seen in past, talking about the industry itself, what I've seen in the past is, from last 6 or 7 years, the IT industry has grown immensely, maybe 10 times or 20 times, I believe. I might be wrong on the exact numbers, but it has grown a lot. There are so many companies working on so many stuff, and I really get excited whenever I see new companies working very new stuff. But what do you see in terms of Nepalese community or Nepalese IT industry in next 10 years? How would it look like in terms of the businesses that's coming in right now?
No, I mean, I think it's going to be one of the leaders. I think that when you look at outsourcing generally, everywhere else in the world is getting, really difficult to work with. Nepal is not, for a lot of reasons. I think that I truly, truly think that Nepal is in this really unique position where it could be actually a leader in terms of outsourcing. I think that what you're seeing in the Philippines and what you're seeing in India and what you're seeing in a few of these other places is people shift around in companies a whole lot. I think that even price-wise, it's getting really difficult. But Nepal is going to be, I think, uniquely placed to be that leader. Now it's just, can we source people? Can we get enough interest to do that? I think that something that we've had our employees do is even going out to villages and teaching people a little bit about technology. Earlier, we had this group of really amazing engineers that would go out to elementary schools. And so if that can still be a thing, I think that if we can source the people, it's going to be amazing. And that's why we're so grateful to be in this market with you guys, because I think that, Seva Development, TechCraft, a lot of these other companies, they're going to be huge leaders here in 10 years, and it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, thank you very much. We hope to see to work together with Seva Development also, and see the IT industry go a lot. And in terms, you mentioned a little bit about the pricing, that the pricing situation in Nepal, which is a bit competitive in terms of the other countries, and also for the skill sets that they are getting. But
right.
How does an average American company, or maybe the other companies from other countries, feel like in terms of the pricing? Like, is it too expensive, or is it quietly good enough, or what's the feedback from the client on that?
Yeah, I think that everywhere we're seeing these skill sets be compensated what they should be.
Yeah, true.
And we as a company are needing to make sure that our people are taking those steps so that they're feeling good enough so that they can stay. So I think that it's kind of all around the world. This is lifting, and I think it's a really good thing, because the more that people can, I really don't think that people should get into development just for the money. I've seen a lot of people want to, but then what happens is they learn some skills, they realize it's kind of hard, it requires a little bit more math than what they thought, and then they stop doing it. Mm-hmm. I think, though, that if people can just focus on creating, because creating is a very human thing to do. We create all the time, and I think that that's how we are best as a people, is if we're creating. And one of the best expressions of that in modern times is being able to be a developer or a tester. You're helping to create the products of tomorrow. And I think that if people can keep that as a vision, I think that they're going to be a lot more interested in sticking around through the hard times.
True, exactly true. So thank you very much, Jeff, for all your insights and the experience that you have said. If I had time, I would talk with you for hours, but we're in kind of shortage for the time sake, because you have a lot of things planned for today, and Seva Development is having a welcoming and birthday party today. So thank you very much for your time that you have spent with us, and it was short, and we tried to focus on a lot of things, and your experience and everything that you have said is something inspiring in terms of what you have given back to the community in Nepal. And I hope the company grows to a very, very larger number, and hope to see you again in next time. But do you have any last words to the audience and the Nepalese IT company who are listening to this podcast, and that you'd like to say?
Yeah. I think that, first of all, I'd like to say that the people of Nepal have given me so much more than I could have ever given them. I think that being around, it is so inspiring. It's so amazing. I love this city. I love your food. I love everything about Nepal. And I am very grateful to be associated with this beautiful country and want to come back more and more. I would just say that one of the best things that you could be doing is to create. And I think that if you want to create something really, really special, and I don't just mean create good products, but if you want to create a great life for you and for your family, if you want to create great memories, and if you want to, have a career that is something special, I think that you should really consider Seva Development as being somewhere to go. I would love to work with you, and anyway, and if I could just say, Ravi, you're amazing. Your team is amazing. We've loved working with you, and this podcast is a great expression of your love for this community. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your kind words, and thank you very much. As I've said, hopefully we can again talk back in this podcast next time you're in Nepal, or maybe we can do it virtually next time. Yeah. We don't need the boundary of the countries and land borders. So thank you very much for your time, Jeff, and to the audience who have been listening to this end, thank you very much. It was a very unique setup in terms of the podcast that we're doing, because we're doing this in different locations than our studio, but as the time permits, where we will talk again with Jeff in the next podcast. But until then, have a great time. We'll come back with the next question next week. So until then, have a great time. Bye-bye.